Today is Saturday, March 5th. What happens to the stuff we send to space when it breaks or stops working or collides with something else? Well, a lot of it turns into what's often referred to as space junk. Yep, there are thousands of pieces of junk just floating around space, orbiting Earth all the time. And just this week, one of those pieces, an old rocket, crashed into the moon. There was no major impact here on Earth from that rocket part, but other space junk could be more of a threat. So today, I'm joined by renowned space environmentalist and astrodynamicist, Dr. Moriba Jah from the University of Texas. He's credited with developing the world's first crowdsourced tool to better track objects in space. He's also the co-founder and chief scientist for Privateer Space, a company working to monitor satellites and debris in Earth's orbit like never before. We spoke with Dr. Jah just before the rocket hit the moon, and he told us space junk is a much bigger problem than that one rocket and has the power to disrupt not only our future in space, but also life here on Earth. Welcome to the Newsworthy Special Edition Saturday, when we sit down with a different expert or celebrity every Saturday to talk about something in the news. Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for our regular episodes, where we provide all the day's news in 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. It's now time for today's Special Edition Saturday. Dr. Moriba Jah, thank you for coming on the Newsworthy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's start with the basics. Can you briefly explain for our listeners what is so-called space junk and where does it come from?
We have about 40,000 things ranging in size from a cell phone all the way up to the space station in different orbital highways. Out of about these 40,000 things, roughly about 4,000 are things that work. Everything else is garbage. And when I say garbage, I mean nuts, bolts, specks of paint, chips, solar panels broken, rocket bodies, satellites dead and alive. All this is part of that 40,000 objects plus of stuff around Earth.
And NASA can only track so much of it, right?
Yeah, so we really can't track things smaller than the cell phone. So when we go down to like speck of paint, all of that is hypothesized, meaning we're assuming that the population down to speck of paint is actually probably close to 1 million pieces. And a speck of paint traveling at really high speeds, several times the speed of a bullet, could penetrate an astronaut's suit. So it could be a bad day for sure.
So what is the main reason people should care about this?
I really believe that space tells us more about us, meaning it's the perfect mirror of sorts. I mean, we have satellites that are gathering information on weather patterns, climate change, help with disaster relief, figure out where we should be planting things, how water should be used, all these things. We have banking and financial transactions going through satellites, timestamped by these things. We also have global internet provided by satellites. I use position navigation and timing. Even when I'm not thinking about it through my cell phone, every time I buy something or whatever, people actually use these space services and capabilities more than they know about. At any given point, there may be some bolt that schwacks some satellite and renders it useless. There's no Walmart for satellites. Maybe one day there will be, but today you can't just go pull one off the shelf and then put it on a rocket, light the candle, and there you go. So we don't have that capability. So if we lose a satellite, that's a significant thing. It's a significant setback for sure. But I would even say this, Erica, we've seen just in the past year, more humans going into orbit. Bezos, the billionaires and this sort of stuff, which actually I think is a good thing. Seeing people heavily resourced going and exploring means that the rest of us will get to do it one day, hopefully. But as opposed to just getting on a plane, now when you go on a rocket ride, you might get hit by a piece of debris. If you and I got on a plane and after they say, cabin's been pressurized, mask will fall out in the case of depressurization, blah, 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 and there are some random bullets in the air that might hit the hull of this aircraft and basically cause everybody to lose their life. Good luck. We hope you have a safe flight. Like, I'm not getting on that plane, but that's how riding on a rocket is today. Those are the risks that we're embracing, and that sucks.
So I want to talk about something that's going on right now. By the time this airs, NASA says an old rocket will have crashed into the moon. For starters, what's expected to happen when it crashes?
Look, several things have been smashed into the moon, and people just aren't aware of this, right? So this is going to be no different in the effects on the moon, which are going to be fairly localized. But it's just one more thing, right? It's like going to the beach. I've been to many beaches in my life. I spent years on Hawaii. It's horrible to go to a pristine beach and then you see a can. It's okay, I'm going to pick this one up. It's just one can. And then all of a sudden you see another wrapper. And then all of a sudden it's like, how many times are we going to allow this stuff to happen before we say, look, the environment's getting polluted. We can call it anything you want, but at the end of the day, it's littering. That's the effect of this rocket crashing into the moon, is just, it's another piece of litter and junk on another celestial body, and is just showing how humanity writ large is, stuck in this mode of, being very viral, unfortunately.
Something that's really stood out about this situation is that there was confusion about where this particular rocket came from. So I know at first it was thought to be an old SpaceX rocket. Now it's said to be a Chinese rocket, but China's denying that. So do we know which it is? And how does confusion like that happen in the first place?
The thing is, if we only had one object in orbit, Erica, then as soon as you detect the thing, you know what it is. But now when we have all these pieces of debris, rocket bodies and stuff, most of the stuff that is up there, because it's dead, it doesn't report its identity. Whenever you look at it, it doesn't say, I'm object 1, 2, 3. It's just another dot in the sky. We don't actually see the thing like fully resolved. We don't see the size. We don't see its shape. We don't see any of that stuff. So because these are just like dots on a radar or dots on a telescope, it's very difficult to resolve the identity of dots. And so this is why we have to collect measurements that are very sensitive to these physical properties or traits, like the material composition and the size and all this other stuff. And so a colleague and a very good friend of mine at University of Arizona, Vishnu Reddy, he and his students, they're able to say, okay, when we compare the material properties of this rocket as compared to a SpaceX or as compared to one of these Chinese rocket bodies that is purported to be similar, maybe, same make model kind of stuff, it looks a whole lot like the Chinese one. And so we're a lot more confident with saying that it's a Chinese rocket body than the SpaceX one.
Still ahead, even as space gets more cluttered, our guest believes it's important to send even more things into orbit. He explains why and talks about other solutions to do it safely and sustainably. But first, let's take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by KiwiCo. Springtime is the perfect time for kids to make new discoveries, like how caterpillars turn into butterflies. KiwiCo is such a great way to help your kids have the type of hands-on experiences in STEAM topics that will spark curiosity and inspire creativity. From rainbows to rocket ships and everything in between, KiwiCo has a subscription line for kids of all ages, so their experts have picked out the perfect items and projects for your child's readiness. We got our first KiwiCo when my son Dax was just an infant, and I remember our pediatrician complimenting us on one of the toys I brought into the office from our KiwiCo crate because it was so well designed for his particular age and development. And now it's fun to see how the KiwiCo crates change alongside him. So step into spring and celebrate the season of discovery with a KiwiCo subscription. Get 30% off your first month plus free shipping on any crate line with the code newsworthy at kiwico.com. That's 30% off your first month at KIWICO, kiwico.com with the promo code newsworthy. This episode is also brought to you by Rothy's. I now have 3 pairs of Rothy's shoes, and 2 of them are Rothy's best sellers, the Point and the Flat. And I love them both. They're easy to slip on for pretty much any occasion, and they're stylish, comfortable, and washable. In fact, People magazine named the Point the best flat for their first ever Style Awards last year. Of course, that's not all Rothy's offers. They always have a bunch of different colors, patterns, and styles of shoes to choose from. And no matter what you get, they'll be comfortable right out of the box and still look great years later. Plus, I always have to mention how great Rothy's is for the planet. And we're talking about everything Rothy's makes. This is a company that has repurposed millions of water bottles into their signature thread that then goes into all of their products. It's easy to see why millions of women, including me, wear Rothy's shoes every day. Step up your shoes and accessories this spring and get ready to be asked, are those Rothy's? Plus, get $20 off your first purchase at rothys.com/newsworthy. That's ROTHYS, rothys.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to my conversation with Dr. Moriba Jah. How much worse do you expect it to get, especially as we know people like Elon Musk are sending up thousands more satellites that eventually may not work and then are just kind of stuck in orbit, right?
Yeah, so this gets to the sustainability of the space environment. there's a certain carrying capacity to each orbital highway. Like we don't launch stuff to put it just anywhere. We put things in very specific orbits because Mother Nature gives us a perfect place to put a satellite that has a specific purpose. Just like there are specific highways on the planet, even in the air, there are air vectors and stuff for flights, shipping lanes giving ocean currents. Orbital space has the equivalent like orbital current. So there's Goldilocks places to put satellites, and there's only so much carrying capacity for each one, meaning number of objects and the uncertainty with which we can understand and predict where the thing's going to be in the future. If things are really uncertain, then it starts taking away our ability to make decisions to keep ourselves safe. When we think about how worse can it could get to the point where certain orbital highways become unusable because the carrying capacity has been saturated.
And you're not saying not to send things to space anymore.
I'm not saying that. I think that we have to actually continue sending things to space. I think we're going to have to send lots more stuff to space. And in fact, I think that we need to become an interstellar species for sure. The only way to become an interstellar species is by continuing to use space and explore and sending lots more stuff up there. But the way in which we do it needs to be different. It can't be, I'm doing this just because I can or because I want to. It has to be, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this in a way that's inclusive and respects that stewardship of the environment. I think we can do that.
So let's talk about potential solutions. For one, I know that you've created a space traffic monitoring system. How does that work, and what are your goals for it?
Yeah, so what we developed at UT Austin with some U.S. government funding is called Asterograph, and it is this kind of crowdsourced database of stuff in space. It's been a research kind of thing, just demonstrating capability, but Privateer Space actually commercialized it. So we would love to see Asterograph become operationalized through Privateer Space into this kind of global participatory sensing system where people from all around the globe can use it to be safer in orbital space and at the same time provide inputs that would benefit the entire global community.
Anything else you want to add, or just a final thought on this issue?
We will see these things become more prevalent. The amount of space junk continues to grow because governments aren't coming together to pass laws to hold the very people that they license responsible and accountable for implementing and actually achieving sustainable practices. So until governments don't do that, we're going to see this stuff more prevalent in the news. And unfortunately, Erica, I think that people are going to become desensitized. Oh, it's just another piece of debris or blah, blah, blah. I'm afraid that it's not going to be newsworthy anymore. And then people just aren't going to care. And so I want to find a way to connect with the general audience to see if I can recruit empathy from humanity towards this problem and motivate people to embrace stewardship as if our lives depended on it. That's my goal.
Well, we want to thank Moriba Jah for sharing his insights today. For more information about the work he's doing at Privateer Space, you can check out the link in our episode notes. And be sure to tune in to our regular episodes every weekday when we get you up to speed on the day's top headlines in about 10 minutes. We'll be back on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend.